Well, hello everyone. I think we have some people in the YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a link for YouTubers, people watching on YouTube, not people who make YouTube stuff. And I'm going to drop that into the YouTube chat. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. So if you want to join the StreamYard stream and be interactive, you can just click on that. Now you will need Firefox if you're on Mac. So this will not run on many versions of Safari, unfortunately. But if you're happy sticking out on the YouTube feed, then please do. We'll just wait a few more minutes. Those of you who are here, give us a heads up. Let me know if the sound is okay. I'm just going off my laptop here, my MacBook. Yeah, so is anyone... Oh, we've got a comment. Okay, cool. So if anyone wants to join on the StreamYard stream, then all good. And I'll just put we are live. Join in if you fancy. And post that to our Mixbus Pro user group. So I can see there's 6 people. Does anyone want to drop a comment in the chat in the YouTube, just so we know that's all working? Nope. Well, we'll hang on for another 2 minutes until time, and then we will run these tips, webinar, workflow stuff. So I'll just give you a bit of a background info on what's happened and why I'm doing this video at the minute. So my studio is somewhat out of use at the moment, in part renovation, redecorating and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not filming anything for the moment. Not filming anything from my place at the moment. So I thought I would do a quick webinar to discuss the things that people maybe want to talk about and what they are interested in terms of Harrison Mixbus, and just like some hints and tips on what people are doing in terms of workflow. So we are at 6 p.m. British summertime, so it's a lovely day. I think I will just comment then. Right, okay, so for those of you who are here, or those of you watching at a later date, we're going to talk very briefly about workflow and workflow tips and all that kind of stuff. Things that I use in Mixbus that are useful tools and so on. We've got Matthew here, so I'm going to add you to the stream. Yeah, if you keep your mic off, unless you want to ask questions or anything, then please do. So yeah, you can also drop stuff in the chat or the comments, and you'll see that. So this is the system that I use for the Recording Studio Masterclass coaching program. So those of you who have been to RSM events before will know that you can drop all the info in the side screen. So anyway, can we just get a thumbs up that my sound is okay and you can all hear me properly? Anyone want to give me a yay or nay? We've got something in the chat. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, cool. So it seems like you can hear me perfectly well. So yeah, workflow in Mixbus. So we'll keep it relatively quick, and we'll maybe have a chat at the end if there's people around. So what I want to sort of share perhaps is the hi Ben, Ben from Harrison's here. So I just wanted to kind of open up a bit more of a forum thing. We've talked about this on the Mixbus Pro user group continuously. Maybe it would be nice to have somewhere a bit more interactive where people can pop on and chat and so on. So I thought using this, I thought using this platform would be a really good way to do that. So I've just got 3 tips videos to show you. I've pre-recorded them because I tend to ramble, as you know. So these are just things that I do in my day-to-day workflow in Mixbus and how I can... hey, Tom's here. Are you joining us, Tom, on the video? You're welcome to. No, yeah, so just things that I do when I'm doing music for sync and so on, and the kind of ardor core of Mixbus makes this really, really useful in terms of actually making my work a lot more simple. And there's tons of workflow things that I use on a day-to-day basis, but I'm just going to show you a few. So we're going to start off with a screen cap video. If I can find it, it's somewhere here on my computer, and I'll just add people in as they arrive. So again, if you can mute your mic, that would be amazing. Let's get started on our first video. So, oh, first little video, we're going to look at how I implement easy management of different versions of sync music. By sync music, I mean music that is going for television, video, games, you know, movies, apps, all that kind of stuff. You may sometimes need to do several different versions of a track if it's going to be used for sync, so the editors can access the stems a bit better. Now, some libraries and some production companies simply want a copy of the stems that all add up to make the master track. That can be annoying because that means those stems then can't really interact with each other. Although in my experience, you might be too worried about actually if you start getting into the minutiae of how and why these issues might arise. Let me just stop there and say some library companies require stems that mix together at unity gain to create the final track. That can't happen if you've got some kind of dynamics which is program dependent on the master bus. So unless you're feeding that a side chain of what the mix was, you're never going to be able to have those stems that would interact digitally add up to the final mix. Kind of doesn't matter. I've never ever had anyone come to me and go, "Oh, it doesn't quite. It's not digitally identical." So that was the key point that I was trying to get across there. You know, slight differences. It's not a big deal in general. Now, I've got a track here. It's Ashley Faith and the Compass Rose, and Ashley's kindly given us permission to use the project for educational purposes, and including the upcoming Analog Mixing Basics course, which I'll talk to you more about later. So yeah, here's the track. As you can see, it's split up into stems. Run. And it all comes together in a final mix. Now, this was done in another session. Actually, that was mixed on the desk. analog, but those stems could be from another project. So I've just added a bit of reverb because there was no reverb recorded on this vocal, and there's a bit of reverb on the shells and the electric guitar stem. So I mentioned a moment ago that you might want various different versions of this. So you might be asked to provide a TV track, which is for an artist to sing on television. You might be, so it just has the backing vocals. You might be asked to supply an instrumental. You might be asked to supply a vocal only stem. You might be asked to supply a mellow stem. So how do we do this? Well, it's really simple actually, because if you're working with lots of different versions, you can just copy this whole chunk here, paste it along here, and remove the parts that you don't want. Cool, that's really easy, but you can pretty much do that in any digital audio workstation. Let's have a look at the things that Mixbus is really good at doing. And that is management of these. So let's just say I did all of my versions, but then the bass was a bit loud. I tried it out in the car or something later on down the line and realized the bass was a bit overwhelming, or the vocal was a bit sharp, or whatever, right? If I do it with this kind of method, I can make one change in the track mixer, in the mixer window, for instance, and then export all of these again. But yes, it's a pain. I've got to set up and export them all one by one. Or have I? Well, no, I don't. Some of you will know that there is a really great tool in Mixbus called Ranges. And if I just simply select one region from each of these chunks, and I go to Region, Ranges, add range marker per region, we get a little bunch of ranges popping up in our Ranges window at the bottom. And these ranges can be relabeled. I'm going to call this Full Mix. I'm going to call this Instrumental. I'm going to call this TV. Come on, there we go. So TV, and I'm going to call this Mellow. Okay, so here's our instrumental, no vocals. Here's our TV track with just backing vocals. And here's our mellow version with just keys. I mean, these are just examples, and they're not sort of definitive in any way. So that's all well and good, but how do we actually do anything with these? Well, I simply go to Session, Export to Audio, and I choose the time spans dialog here. So I'm going to select all, and I'm going to remove the session one because that's the whole project. And there we go. We'll export our full mix, our instrumental, our TV, and our mellow version. So I can even make sure that this is added. The time span name here is added. Okay, so it's actually enforcing that because we've got more than one time span selected. So really, I can just have session name. So we've got webinar workflow tips, and then we've got a revision, we've got full mix, and then we've got the date. And if I click export, it will go through all of those, and it'll actually export all of these 4 different versions. So that's our first tip as to how to manage larger projects with different versions and so on. And you know, if you do need to make a change, and I've been in this situation many times myself, you do need to make a change, you can come back, you can make a quick tweak here, you can save a new snapshot, I'll talk about that in a moment, and you can export them. So that's just how I manage multiple versions, and I found it to be really effective and quick and easy. I'd rather be having a nice cup of tea whilst this happens rather than waiting and trying to export each stem individually. And you know what, even if you do have the problem of let's undo that. If you do have the problem of needing individual stems, you can, sorry, I'm a little bit clumsy here on the trackpad. If you do have the problem of needing those individual stems, you can actually just pull them out into position individually, and it would kind of look like this. And then you can select them all. Let's imagine we've split them all out, we've selected them all, and then we can go region, ranges, add range marker per region, and name each of those individual stems. Of course, these ranges will actually be named after the individual regions, so it might be slightly easier than just changing it from bus prints and so on. So that is something that I use like all the time on when I'm creating different mix packs for library music. So I think that's a really useful, certainly if you're doing stem mastering as well, especially if you're doing it for other people who are producing music. Quite often they won't necessarily be a mix engineer, so they'll send over a bunch of stems or whatever for you to kind of tidy up a bit and do your magic on it, or just run it through Mixbus through different buses and so on. Anyone got any questions on that? I'm going to have a look on the YouTube chat for a moment. No questions on that. No, we good? We all happy? Thumbs up.
Russell, can you?
Yes.
Can you effectively use that with if you're doing a CD layout and basically doing mastering of all your different tracks, not necessarily doing your actually CD print order, but just doing your mastering processes of all your tracks individually, and then just use that same method to collectively drop them all out, and then put them into your. Then you can just pick them up and put them into your 2-track for ordering and.
Absolutely. So that's exactly what I do when I'm mastering on Mixbus. So you'll see that I have. So see where I've got like a diagonal line of the regions.
Yeah.
Basically, usually what I do is I pull all the regions in onto a separate track each, and then I'll drag them into position. Well, I tell a lie. What I do is I import them so they are one after another. So they're all in a row, and then I put lock mode on, and then I drag them down onto new tracks. So then you've got basically a big diagonal line, and you can edit any sort of mastering edits level edits and stuff that you need to do on each track. You can do, and it's a good way of operating because you can jump to different tracks within the album and just check your vocals are all kind of a nice continuous level throughout. So that's definitely.
Yeah, I've sort of found there that the CD markers don't really work that well for laying it out for working through it. So I've gone to exporting them out and then bringing them back into waves or something like that to actually do the final CD track ordering.
I've not done a vast amount of Redbook CD DDP design in Mixbus, like the actual final thing. I know you can do it. I don't. I mean, Ben is somewhere knocking around, so he might have a comment on that. He says, I use named regions when my band practices. We just leave the session rolling and record all the songs linearly, and then I can later name the ranges and export each song. Yeah, so not related to the mastering, but yeah, exactly that kind of thing. Maybe there's sort of scope for doing like a mastering video or something.
Yeah, I'm like you. Got to look into the Redbook more in Mixbus because it would be handy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great though.
I've used Hoffer for years, so I've just stuck with that. But to be honest, I'm probably doing 2 or 3 CDs a year now in terms of DDP because it just doesn't happen. No one's really.
I'm at the moment doing redoing a bunch of stuff from back in the 90s, basically the early to late 90s for stuff that was released back then, and it's getting redone again. So that's why I'm trying to work out the red booking on it at the moment. But that's a good shortcut.
So Ben says we don't export Redbook DDP. The only older, less pro .toc files, which some consumer burner software can use. So there's no Redbook. I was lying.
Okay, so that's also Set up markers, drop it all out, and then run it through a print program.
Yeah, because then you can just send it out. And workflow tip number 2, which is coming up now, I think is actually really useful in terms of that as well. So I'm going to share that now, and we'll watch that. Step. Next little tip we're going to be doing is how to streamline your file output formats. So I quite often have specific file format outputs, particularly with these stem versions and stuff, but just with mastering and mixing in general, I like to be very consistent in how I output my file formats and how they're labeled. And as you can see in this session export window, I've actually got a few things set up. So let's just recreate this setup. So normally it'll start off with your BWAV or whatever, with all your details there. But I have very specific file formats that I like to work in, and a method that I like to operate. So all I'm going to do here is click New, and just go in and call this Russ high res. And then I just want to make sure that I'm at 48 kilohertz, 24-bit, lossless linear PCM, and I would click Save there. I've actually already got that file format here. So it's Russ high res, and we can see the file format. There is no dithering applied because it's the 24-bit version, etc. So, and we can also choose the different sample rate conversion if the project is not at that sample rate. So I like that because sometimes people send me stuff at different sample rates, and sometimes my sessions get bumped into different sample rates. I generally try and keep all my output at 48 24-bit. So we can also add another file format, and this means that 2 files will be created. So our second, well, let's just go in our first one and let's just call it high res. Okay, so that's our first file format. It's Russ high res. So the second file format, we're just going to go new, and I'm going to call this Russ CD. And we're going to choose 44.1, 16-bit, all the same parameters. I'm actually going to cancel that because I have this one pre-made here. So there we go. That's our CD output. And then we're going to add another file format, and this is what I call a client rush. You can call it whatever, like preview or whatever you want. And I'll just show you the settings I have that. So it's called client rush. So let's just make sure this file is just labeled CD. So these are little labels that we're adding to the end. Okay, so we might want to actually choose session name or snapshot name, whatever. And then that gives us our list of what it likes to be called. Client rush. So what is a client rush? Well, if you've got a client who wants a nice loud version, you can normalize, you can trim the silence at the start and the end if needs be. And you can also add a watermark. So this is at half a second of white noise every 15 seconds, and it's at I've set it as minus 18 decibels. I put it at a high quality format, but you know, you could even have it at MP3 or whatever you want, and you could save that. And there we have our 3 file formats. That's a bit of a pain to set up, isn't it? It's a little bit of a pain. Well, what we can do is we can actually call this Russ mix pack, and we can then create new here, and it would allow us to save that. But actually I already have that saved. So we just click the down arrow here, we go Russ mix pack, and it gives us that CD quality audio, which is actually mislabeled on this version, our high res, which is mislabeled, and our client Rush, which is called Client Rush. So that's a really good way, this preset pack is a really good way of making sure that you output all the file formats that you want to. Now, used in conjunction with the last section here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 ranges to export, and we've got 1, 2, 3 file formats. So that gives us a total of 12 audio files output with a single click of export. I think that's pretty impressive in terms of the actual dialogue. So yeah, like, really powerful tool when you're doing sort of multiple mixes and stuff and trying to archive various parameters, various streams and so on from a mix. That is the end. For some reason, StreamYard likes to cut off the last 2 seconds of of any videos that we play. But so that was tip 2. So creating a workflow exporter. I know this is all like really boring stuff, isn't it? But ultimately, if you can do one button click instead of re-exporting everything as different file formats every time, or even just that like a few seconds. Obviously, the screen capture that I did is on a new machine, so I don't have all my presets on there. So that's why we had that naming mistake earlier on. That wasn't something that Mixbus does particularly. That was my fault. But yeah, so I do that, and then you can even do subfolders and stuff, and create things, setups to give you subfolders, and then then you can kind of work much more efficiently in terms of clicking. So when you come to a point where you've got like 20 or 30 different ranges to export, and you need to do them in 24-bit and 16-bit and OGG-Vorbis and MP3 and this, that, and the other, and then you want something with a watermark so your client doesn't run off with it, that is like an incredibly powerful tool for doing that, because whilst your computer is going to take exactly the same length of time to actually do the rendering, the human element of clicking in between is like, it frees a lot of time for you to go off and maybe work on your other machine, or maybe go and make lunch or whatever, have a call with a client whilst things are rendering out. It's not uncommon if I'm doing a package for a library for the render time to be like an hour and a half or something, in terms of actually rendering out all those files. Cool. Any questions? Are there any? Alberto says, "Hi, Mixbus, the best software." Hi, Alberto. You can join us on the video chat if you want as well. The link is at the top of the chat on YouTube. Cool. All righty. So, no questions on part 2. No? Good. Okay. Cool. Ben's saying hello. I don't know if you can see the chat, you guys. There's a comments section popping up on YouTube and in StreamYard. All right.
Why can't we see Ben? Come on, Ben, join the chat.
Ben's too busy doing whatever he's doing. It is a weekend. He shouldn't be working, should he? Really? So, all right. The next one is super quick. So it's just a 2-minute video. So brace yourselves. And if you don't already do this, you should be ashamed of yourselves. But I think those folks who are here watching on YouTube and involved on the StreamYard chat probably all do this, but it's worth mentioning. Well-known one, actually, but if you don't know this, then you should be using it, or you should be aware at least that it's possible. So this is the snapshots area. It's in the editor list, and snapshots are like sort of mini versions of the project, so you can sort of jump backwards and forwards and recover things that you might have lost, or look at previous versions, or even just do complete different remixes. So in this version, I've got my workflow tips as my main thing, and then I've got my workflow tips mixing and workflow tips mastering, and I can kind of reload those just simply by clicking. It's taking a little moment because of the screen capture software here, but it will load up my various different versions. So let's take, for example, the idea that we might delete a file by accident. All we need to do is just find and we might have saved that. So I'm just going to save that, and it'll save the snapshot. We can just jump onto a different snapshot that we've done previously, and as you'll be able to see in a moment, just check you're still connecting to me. As you'll be able to see, the snapshot has recovered the error. So you can do this just to get information about mixes. You can do it to do different versions. You can maybe you've got a project and you want to try it with some electronic drums, and the acoustic drums would then have to be changed massively. Do it in a snapshot. So session, snapshot, and switch to new version, and eDrums might be an example, and then that will obviously save in there. When you go into your recent window, it will let you see all the different snapshots. If you just click on the top one, it'll load the most recent snapshot. But snapshots absolutely invaluable. Yeah, so who uses snapshots? Oh, only 50. Oh, yeah. Tom? Nah, he's like, nah. You didn't get snapshots on a console. Just do it. Tom doesn't even save his work. He just prints it out because it's right the first time.
I only mix, remember?
That is true. Yeah, but you might snapshot mix snapshots. So,
I use.
Yeah. So when I'm working in the dreaded, it's Pro Tools is great, right? It's a really powerful piece of software, and you encounter it a lot in recording studios, and you get a lot of people will send you stuff in Pro Tools, so you have to have it and be aware of how to use it. But I find myself with like all these files, like tons and tons of file names, 1, 2, 3, and then I started to realize that I should actually label them with what's going on. So I'll label them, I don't know, like version 1 would be tracking, version 2 might be vocal edit, version or vocal comp or whatever. So then I'll put it in the title, just so I know when I come back later on, if I need to kind of access something, I'm not sort of fighting through to try and remember when that version was saved. So obviously the same goes for snapshots. If you're going to use them, then just give them a human readable name so you can go into them. But I was chatting with Ben the other day actually about the power of the ARDA/Mixbus XML file. So if you and maybe we'll do a video on this as well. If you ever wanted to get specific parameters, I don't know if you've ever opened an ARDA file in a text editor, but that's a really fun thing to do because you can go through and you see exactly what files start where, and you can see if you're using audio units plugins. I think I'm not sure what other ones, but anything except VST. You can actually see the parameters of each of the plugins, and if it changes, you can see what it changes. And it's literally like it'll say mid-frequency 803 hertz plus 3.215 decibels. So you could, that kind of is inspiring to me as something that might be usable in the future, should someone want to get all those details if they don't have access to Mixbus or whatever. Whereas anything that's closed, a file format that's closed and hidden, then what happens in 20 years' time if you want to get your session file and reload it, and no one can access that particular file, or are you then at the mercy of the company that is selling you a subscription to, whatever DAW is the flavor of the month in 20 years' time, and whether it'll be able to read those files or not, or whether the plugins will exist, or whether the software will even run on the hardware that exists at that point, I don't know. So that's like peace of mind for me, having that has human readable text that you can literally like copy out of one session and drop into another. If you want to copy parameters on a plugin, you can take that chunk of text and copy and paste it, or you can, if you wanted to run the same project at different sample rates, you can go in and manually change the sample rate and just change all the WAV files over to a different sample rate. So that's me 3 tips for today. Has anyone got any queries or questions or anything, or thoughts or abuse to sling at me or anything? No? Tom's very quiet.
Actually, that XML file is a great idea. Where does that hide in the file structure?
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'll try and find one.
Is it in the project files, or is it in the system cache files?
It is
the log files.
It is the project file.
Right.
So let me just see if I can find.
So just the ardor.bat.
Yeah. So let's just grab this. So it's literally the .ardor file.
Yeah.
So if you open the .ardor file with a text editor. Yeah.
Cool. That's why I got the drift of what you're doing. Just where it was, where the file was. So it's not a separate file. It's just the session file or the snapshot file, and you can open it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
So I'm just going to open that up with. I suppose I should do it in just a text editor so people can see this easily. So we'll show this. So let me share some of my screen. And so the first thing to note is that it is readable in any basic text editor. So yeah, let's just webinar workflow tips. I think that's it. Is that it? Bear with me. Let's hope that this is so. This is what your file structure looks like, and this is the file structure of the session file that we were looking at. So anyone who's watching on the YouTube, you'll see that your ardor file is you've got a history back and a .ardor file, and that's just in the main folder. So you just need to click one of those and load them up into a text edit. So I'll remove that now, and I will add the actual file, because this could be a value, I think. I think this is it. Yep. Okay. So for those of you who haven't seen this before, this is literally what the .ardor file looks like, and it's as simple as I don't know if you can see this here. The sample rate is 48 kilohertz. The file name is here. The created with Mixbus 32C. This is a pre-release version, modified with 32C 8.0 pre-release, and then you've just got all of this information here that is giving you details of what the files are and what the buses are and so on. And then I'm just going to see if we can find in it. I know that there's a seventh heaven. There we go. So I can literally just search for the plugin name, seventh heaven. And unfortunately, this is a bad example because seventh heaven I've had to use as VST3, so it doesn't give me the exact human readable details. Let's look up. I think we might have another reverb, Ace Reverb. Yeah, so there are some plugins which will literally tell you what the parameters are and so on. Unfortunately, the ones that I've got in this particular session file are not those, but you get the general gist of it. You can copy and paste plugin parameters to and fro, and you can, if you were an absolute genius, you could actually make mix changes if you really wanted to. But so that is yeah, that's kind of my workflow stuff that I regularly do, amongst other things. Yeah, any more thoughts? Anyone got any kind of particular ways that they manage files, or I know Tom's had a history in computing. We've got some activity on the chat here. Echo. Yeah, I think that was from earlier, wasn't it? So Frank says, oh, that's other Frank. Do those tracks and bus settings line up with the same name for Lua scripts? Ooh, no, I don't think so. Lua scripts, really interesting sort of thing in terms of automation, and that was something that I was going to talk about actually, maybe in another one, just like mix prep. I think some of you got the mix prep Lua script that I put out. If you haven't, you can get it from rucoproaudio.com. And it's a free script, and it lets you run this little Lua script. In fact, I will see if we can find it. It's a region normalizer script. So let me just share that with you. Have you got it? Tommy's got it. So for those interested, there is a let's just see if this behaves. We're going to kind of go into the metaverse here. Infinite. There we go. So hopefully you should be able to see now that there is a I'm just going to check this on my phone, make sure you can see that screen. Yeah, okay, so if you go to rucoproaudio.com, there's a region normalizer Lua script, which is absolutely free, so go over there and download it, and you can install it into your session and then just click it. I think you've got to select all the regions first, and you click a single button and it kind of works out whether the content is percussive or whether it's more kind of continuous, and then it normalizes it to a relatively appropriate level, which means then your kind of your thresholds and stuff are much easier to manage, and it actually sort of starts the mix for you by getting everything a good decent level. So that's really useful if you're doing, like Tom, if you're doing mix work rather than recording and people are sending you stuff. I'm sure you must get this, like you'll get one track that's like really, really loud, and then the drums, which is just tiny little bits of, you can barely see them or something. So yeah, it's useful for that. But cool. All right. Well, I think we should call it there, unless anyone else got anything to say. thank you for joining, everyone. I've seen there are a few people continuously on. Oh, who's talking here? Oh, Frank's talking.
I was just going to say thanks for the tips. There's some great little helpers. You know, some things we do and some things how to do them better. Great. Cheers.
Good stuff. Cool. Yeah. Well, you know, I'm gonna mute you so we don't get the echo. Otherwise, we'll get complaints off Bart. Yeah, I think it'd be nice to kind of have a few more of these because you know, it's nice for the community to kind of see each other in relatively real time rather than just being on Facebook and stuff. So let me know what the next one's going to be, and I'll do another one maybe next week or something like that. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I will end the broadcast. And Tom it's what, 2 a.m. there or something?
Nah. 12:41.
Oh, not a problem then. I'll let
It's
you
the
go.
middle of the day.
What time's it there, Frank? Where are you? Oh, you're on mute. Hang on. Oh, you've muted yourself, Frank.
I said, Tom is my neighbour. He's in Bangkok and I'm in Vietnam. Same time zone.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Maybe I should change the times of these. Right, I'll see you all soon. Have a great evening, and thank you everyone for joining. Thanks, Ben, for being in the chat, and Frank, and Alberto, and Bart, and anyone who I've missed. And I'll catch you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Russell. See you next time.